whole thing was full on rock and roll from the beginning.
It just came out of nowhere.
Basically, it's just world domination.
Coventry and two-tone are one and the same in a way. Two-tone couldn't have happened anywhere else, because there's only one Jerry for a start.
Jerry was a genius. It was his ideas, it was his vision.
It's like mixing up the chemicals in the lab, and then you get an explosion.
I've jumped off this before, you know.
I bet you have. It was so traumatic, I'd probably forgotten it.
I've never felt that kind of excitement since on stage.
We're not just a dance
People have
band.
said that, yeah.
We had things to say as well.
It was an incredible use of the platform, pop music, to bring global attention to apartheid.
That was the culmination of two-tone, really.
But I mean, this is their first record, and I think it's an absolute gem, I really do. Special AKA, it's on Two-Tone Records.
I guess I wanted to be in a band from, I don't know, about the age of 10. I was, it was a great era for music. The Beatles and the Stones and the Kinks, the Who were my favourite band. We used to follow all the bands and discuss the haircuts and how the drummer held the sticks and all that, I used to study it on top of the pops. I'd grown up from the 60s, and rebellion and music were just always linked together, and that was always part of the songs I wrote. I guess I always grooved along with the sort of left-wing kind of ideas. I played in all sorts of bands when I was at the art college in Coventry, but I'd always wanted to play reggae. I was into punk, but they always used to play reggae at punk gigs between the bands, and that's really what made it bearable for me. So I thought, why not do a punk reggae band, but with kind of real reggae musicians. It wasn't that we were all technical musicians, but together we could make a racket that was better than any of us could make individually.
Great, the Specials, and that's Gangsters, one of those records which really changes your life. I mean, it actually does. You wake up the next day and nothing's ever really quite the same again. Is that too much to say that? I actually believe that.
John Peel was great. He really got behind the band. He gave us sessions on there, and there's no one quite like him.
And I've got a couple of requests. In fact, I should play the other side of it right now, because the other side's very good, and I seem to have got a little time on my hands, so I'll play you that in just a second.
When we'd recorded Gangsters, we didn't have any more money to do a B-side.
And of course, to make a record, you have to have two tracks. And that's where someone came up with the idea of using the track that I'd already recorded.
I played in a band with Neil Davis a long time before that, and Neil had recorded a track, this was a year before, called Kingston Affair, and it was kind of like a disco-y, dubby kind of track, but I liked it. So I said to Neil, well, if you stick a ska beat on top of that, then we can have it on the other side of Gangsters.
We turned that into the Selector, by the Selector.
And then he came up with a band after he made the track, the Selector.
Really exciting to hear the track coming out the radio, because it's so fantastic to hear your music on the radio. Still, it's just the biggest thrill you can have. Well, one of them. It's not the biggest, but it's one of them.
I mean, where do they all come from? These bands, I mean, you've not heard of them before.
Good time music from Coventry, that's the special.
This is where the two-tone revolution began, Coventry in the industrial East Midlands. It's a car-making city which has seen better days.
Coventry has a whole history of, peace, reconciliation, reaching out, sort of talking to others with different perspectives. And it's never really shirked that responsibility. It has always done that.
The idea of mixing black and white and everybody unite, to me, it's Coventry, because I never used to see it happening anywhere else.
Coventry has been a huge magnet for a long time for people to come here from other parts of the world, knowing that they're going to get a skilled job and good wages.
We were just used to having people come into the city to work, whether they be from Asia or whether they be from Jamaica or the West Indies or from Poland. We were just an immigration city.
A lot of people who came here had come because of the car industry. Their kids came over and maybe were like 12, 13, 14, and they had brought music with them. So these kids had something to share with white kids that white kids didn't have.
Any moment now, there's going to be a fierce outbreak of ska. And ska is the new beat from the West Indies, from Jamaica.
Don't call me Scarface. My name is Capone. C-A-P-O-N-E. Capone.
And of course, what that did to the record shops, particularly in Hill Fields, which was a well-known area in Coventry, the record shop there started to import from the West Indies, West Indian records.
Matumbi had a song called Whatever Happened to Blue Beat and Ska. And I thought, yeah, whatever did happen to it, why not revive it, you know?
Coventry and two-tone are one and the same in a way, because two-tone couldn't have happened anywhere else. It wouldn't have. Because there's only one Jerry for a starter.
One of the delightful surprises in the rock and roll business this summer has been the sudden emergence of a new and forceful independent record company called Two Tone.
Well, basically, we want artistic control. There are a few bands and we all needed an identity. I mean, the music and the clothes, but I mean, with the label, it's a stronger thing. It's a whole movement.
How records were made was a complete mystery. You know, the record companies kept it secret, I think. But when Rough Trade started and punk started, this do-it-yourself kind of ethos, and I thought, wow, we can actually make our own record. So the obvious thing to do was to put out our record on our own label, which was the Two Tone label.
finally tracked the specials down to Two Tone HQ, home of the hits. Next to the Poodle Parlour, a note said. At last, a chance to meet the board of directors of the fastest growing independent record label in the country.
Hey, look, Poodle Parlour.
The Poodle Parlour is still here.
Changed. I know. I used to bring my dog down here. When the poodle though, and that's in flat.
Apparently, this is the birthplace of Two Tone.
Second floor
It
up.
says so there. Jerry's old flat.
That's where everybody used to go. There used to be a lot happening in there.
Yeah.
When you walked up, you could hear the noise, everybody. I wouldn't call it a party. It was just like having fun, mixing, mingling.
You had to actually be somewhere to talk to people, didn't you, in those days? And
Yeah.
this was the central point. You know, Jerry had all the information that we all needed, so we'd come visit him and hang out and get things done.
Right, shall we have a dance?
To be honest with you, we used to hang around up here about 8, 9, sometimes 10 people in that one little room. It was just like being at home, at your own house. And we used to laugh, joke, mess around, dancing.
Yeah, we enjoyed ourselves enormously.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm showing them around the office. Here we have the checkbooks, the receipts, oh, hang on. The contracts. I think this is our Burning Roads contract.
The genius that Jerry had was he put a very eclectic of people together, very eclectic.
The specials is mixed up. You had me, the rude boy, then you had Roddy the Rockabilly, Linval the Reggae Soul Man, Horace the Teacher.
I hated punk, I just couldn't see the point in it at all.
Horace was the first, I think. Then I persuaded Terry to leave his punk band called Squad.
On to Terry now.
We were one of the first punk bands in Coventry.
They were pretty much punk by numbers, you know, no disrespect, but, you know, they weren't really going anywhere. And Brad, well, I actually shared a flat with Brad, so I knew he could play reggae, but, you know, I did go out of my way to make it a multi-racial band. You know, it didn't just happen.
There was a buzz around, particularly in our record shop. So everybody was talking about this little band. So I went and saw them. The crowd just went nuts. And I hadn't seen that sort of hysteria since the Beatles. So you go, ka-ching, I can get these guys a deal. Because to me, it was that good.
We discovered Pete Waterman, in fact, and we thought, oh, he might make a good manager. And we should point out that we were actually famous before him.
Well, technically, I guess I was their manager. You know, I got asked by Jerry to manage them. I use the term loosely. I don't think you can manage Jerry, but that's beside the point. My role really was to try and get them a recording contract and get them in the studio. We did 2 or 3 takes in Berwick Street Studios in Berwick Market on a Sunday. So I've got the cassette here, so I'm going to put it on. I haven't heard this for 44 years.
This is the dawning of a new era. This is the dawning of a new era.
Jerry was a genius because he taught me a big lesson. I'm not being unkind to Terry, but he ain't the greatest singer in the world. But what he has got is a voice that's very distinctive.
By 2 o'clock, you were Rams and List. Had to walk home to Area 6. This is the dawning.
And what that taught me was, it's not about singing, it's about character. And Jerry had put those characters together almost like a cartoon strip in a funny sort of way, and it made this believable entity.
I do genuinely like Pete Waterman, and he did genuinely help us. But the only trouble is he then tried to teach Terry to dance. I just thought we have to keep this within the realms of the possible, Pete, you know. But also, you know, if you're going to teach someone to dance, you know, it's good to learn how to dance yourself first, you know, and if you've ever seen Pete Waterman dancing, I mean, he's a DJ. DJs are DJs because they can't dance and they need something to do with their hands in the disco, you know.
And it's amazing how different they are from what they finally went on to record. So when I recorded them, they were still a sort of reggae band. When you hear what they became, which was like a ska band, that came from live gigging. Jerry worked it out. Take the crowd. This is what the crowd want. Give them what they want.
This is the boy of the new era. Climb the stairs to the 14th floor. They came up at the door.
Really old ska from the 60s had a much faster tempo, so I realised that would blend much more easily with this up-tempo, high-energy punk music. It's like mixing up the chemicals in the lab, you know, and then you get an explosion. That's what we got, an explosion.
This is so boring. Yes, I know.
When Caribbean music kind of hit England, a lot of the public just sort of thought it was some kind of novelty, you know, that it was kind of fun, happy music. But a lot of Caribbean music was very political, actually. You know, when we took up ska, well, then we took up the cause, if you like, of the some of the lyrics, you know.
The things that were happening at the time in UK meant that there was a lot of frustration and anger politically.
Her Majesty, the Queen, has asked me to form a new administration, and I have accepted.
Thatcher had just come to power, and there's a lot of racial issues throughout the country.
What we've seen is Coventry, one of the greatest symbols of hope of post-war Britain, reduced to a battlefield of hatred. To me, it's a most tragic indictment of our nation.
The 70s were a very brutal time to grow up in Britain, certainly for someone like me as a young Indian girl, because you have the National Front, you have this sense of like hatred and rage on the streets. I grew up in a shop. I never knew who was going to come through the door and attack my mum and dad or me. You know, you were kind of literally on the front line.
Some of the most vicious street fighting ever seen on mainland Britain. Then this weekend, racial fighting looking like a war zone.
150 skinheads.
Vicious fighting flared up between young white skinheads.
The tension is so tight, right, you can cut it with a scissor.
Violence has often been part of the growth of the National Front's organisation. Violence against individual black citizens and violence in the streets.
I thought, well, you know, this skinhead revival is happening, so maybe we need to try and get through to these people. It might be naive or idealistic or whatever, but I thought if we played music that they could relate to and dressed in that way, you know, then maybe we could get our anti-racist message across and turn it into something more positive. But it was a bit nerve-wracking at times.
That music was both joyful, was exuberant, and you could also talk about social issues, things that were concerning, you know, both black kids and white kids from working class backgrounds at the time.
And so young people who were black and white and made a big deal about being black and white and in a band together to challenge racism, to stamp racism out. That was like, a light went off for me, and I was like, yes, here's the first sign I've seen in Britain of a possibility where life doesn't have to be, you know, so scary.
So having two-tone was like, okay, it was like a family, black and white, having a great time.
People probably wouldn't talk to each other normally. They found themselves dancing together to the same band in the same space. It was, come on.
Is this your band? Yeah. It's Madness, the Prince. Faster, he sold the heat with a rock steady beat. earthquake is erupting, but not in Orange Street. A ghost dance is preparing. You got to help us with your feet.
I saw Madness at the Hope and Anchor, and they were playing a bit of ska, so they were wearing similar sort of two-tone suits and stuff. So I think they came up with a similar idea, you know, independently.
Even if I kept on running, I'd never get to Orange Street. So I say there's nothing.
The bands that joined up with Two Tone after Madness were the Beat, the Body Snatchers, with the rather wonderful Road to Dakar in it, and the Selector. Neil Davis had written the instrumental, the Selector, but the band got together to be able to move that on. And that was how I first met Neil and also the other members of what would go on to be the Selector.
Is it where we started?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This
club here on the left here, yeah. The Binley Oak. Yeah. It's a rare rehearsal room.
We're about to go inside, and that's going to be the first time I've actually been in there for over 40 years. Oh, it was so cold in here. We used to rehearse in overcoats. It's just so funny that it's now repurposed as a very, very warm fireplace sales room. Bar being over there, band in the middle of the room here.
We have the old ska rhythm, and we have reggae, we have blues, and there's a bit of funk, and of course we have Janil playing this rock.
This was the place where Pauline met the band, and the band met Pauline the first time she sang with us.
I'd come to Coventry to go to the university here, and I'd ended up being a radiographer, and I was working at the local hospital and also playing my own songs in a folk club of all places. I think it was one of those things, sort of the naivety of youth and just the energy of youth. I just thought, wow, these guys are really onto something. Yeah, let's get in here.
It was a force of nature, really. Her voice suited everything we were doing so well. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. And Pauline coming into the lineup finished the lineup off.
And we got the nod from Jerry Dammers. Would you like to record a single with Two Tone? And that single would be on my radio. There was no blueprint for these things. The people who are looking at the Selector see a black man and a black woman up the front of a band telling them how they think things are, starting that conversation. That's quite rare. That's quite rare, and particularly back then. And also just the sort of weird androgyny that was going on too. And I thought, well, hey, you can make men like you and you can make women like you. What's not to like?
Suddenly I'm watching Top of the Pops. That was Pauline Black, this mixed-race woman in a very male-dominated kind of world at the time. And then my sister went, oh my God, there's you on TV. It was really that, you know, that prominent to me because I'd very short hair, I was wearing the Arrington, and there was Pauline Black looking like that. And I thought, wow, that's me. I want to be like that, you know? Brilliant, loved it.
These are people that you don't normally see as British pop stars. You know, these very mixed, culturally mixed bands.
Because I'd watched it so many times, I was able to sort of prejudge what the camera work would probably do with the chorus. And I thought, they're going to cut from Pauline singing on my radio to the backing vocals going, it's just the same old show. What I thought would be a really cool look for us would be for me and Charlie to be on that camera shot. The white guy and the Lux guy standing next to each other. I wanted that to come out of people's screens as a really really positive image, you know.
I was there in the audience at Top of the Pops on that amazing, momentous day when Madness, Specials and Selector were all on the same bill. And that was like the holy grail, of course, at that time.
One step beyond.
It was a camaraderie. Nobody was like, oh, I'm bigger than you, I'm bigger than you.
Specials did Message to You, Rudy, on that. I remember that. Being very excited.
I was a massive Specials fan, and Two Tone in general. I just absolutely loved it. And I adored Neville. He was rough around the edges. My sister was nuts on Terry Hall. We shared a room, so her side was all Terry and her idols, and mine was all Neville and football. But yeah, so he was my pin-up, and it was, oh God, over 30 years later, maybe 35 years later, that we actually met. And a few years later, we got married.
The church where I used to go as a kid.
And that was absolutely stunning, in the mountains of Jamaica, Sawmill. Amazing to marry your idol. I love rude boys, but not that kind of rude.
No.
This should have been our next single, but they wouldn't play it on the radio. It's called Too Much Too Young. You've done too much, much too young. You're married with a kid when you could be having fun with me. Oh, no, don't give me no more business. You've done too much, much too young. You're married with a son when you should be having fun with me. We don't want no more business.
Pitney means baby, and I had kids when I was young.
Perfect commerciality. Jerry would be frightened to death that I thought his lyrics were commercial, but they were, because his lyrics absolutely magnify the time that we lived in. They show you the time we lived in, that period. They were perfect. I mean, I just remember hearing Too Much Too Young for the first time, and I thought, what a great lyric, you know.
You've done too much, much too young. You're married with a kid when you could be having fun with me. Give me the birth control, we don't want to pick.
You know, they're not sort of poetic and lyrical. So like Leonard Cohen's early work, you know, it's very British and raw. And that's what makes it still so relevant, I think, for young people today.
You could be talking about the worst issues going on, but when you do it with that dancing beat, you know, and those lyrics that, you know, people want to sing along to, I mean, how cool is that? It's a great way of putting those messages out there.
Yeah, the thing is, Jerry picked up on everything. It was almost like Charles Dickens. You know, like Dickens wrote about all the evils of society, and he wrapped it up in a popular story. And that's what Jerry was doing with these songs. They were wrapped up in popular melodies that you would walk away from the ballroom whistling. They passed the old grey whistle test.
I don't know, I just wrote about what happened to me in my life and things that happened and just kind of blend it all together. But I guess looking for kind of universal themes in it all that could apply to... I mean, what I like most about You Is Your Girlfriend was like, that's not political at all, but it's still a universal thing that a lot of people could relate to, I guess.
I'm going out tonight. I don't know if I'll be alright.
Concrete Jungle was written by Roddy because he used to walk through town and get hassled a lot.
It's about living in a rough part of town, so going out getting beaten up. No, does that sort of stem from personal experience? Yeah. You write songs about things you feel yourself or you've been through.
You know, Coventry was quite a violent place to grow up, you know, and when you went out on a Saturday night, you know, there was always fights, and so it was about Coventry, but it was also about everywhere, and people obviously could relate to it all over the country. So
the one thing about Jerry is he's not just creative with words and music, but he's creative with images.
to me, the visual side of it was always really important, you know. It was a total concept.
Oh yeah, and this is the wardrobe department. All second-hand gear, very nice too. Nice piece of mohair.
I've always been a style icon, but because it looked a real mess at the beginning, I actually did some drawings of what I hoped they might wear to make it all look a bit more together.
He's got a fantastic eye. He's an artist, so I guess when he saw that whole Rude Boy thing, he thought, this works as my painting, because you know you've got all that. That's Jerry's eye for detail.
I think it was a newspaper, I can't remember, but they asked me to define what a rude boy, a two-tone rude boy. So I literally got a fag packet and jotted down all these ideas, but it was just a mishmash of styles from the 60s, I guess.
The image, I grew up with it from when I was young, seeing my dad wearing all the nice suits, the trilby. It was my Sunday best. They needed that Jamaican thing in the specials, and they got it.
Ha ha!
It was an easy look to put together with what there was, and people they'd gone out and sourced, which you could at that time in Oxfam shops and all of those kinds of things, the clothes that were worn in the 60s. You know, you just needed a pair of trousers that looked as though they'd had a row with your shoes. And hats. Hats were cheap things. You know, pork pie hat was a cheap thing to be able to get. Fortunately, I look all right in a hat.
So we had the more girly rude girls and we had the more tomboy rude girls. I've always been more of a tomboy. So my dress sense would be the Arringtons, monkey boots or Doc Martens, and then you had your jeans or you had stay-pressed trousers. The more girly rude girls, they tended to go for like a checkered dress, mini skirts, but they would have sort of probably a bow in their hair with a two-tone ribbon as opposed to a hat.
We were wearing stuff like they were wearing, and they absolutely adored that. Kids obviously were coming along maybe as punks or, you know, in their 70s kind of Fair Isle knits and things like that and flares to the first show, and by the time you went back, everything had changed.
We'd play in a place and every single person in the whole building was dressed in black and white, nothing else, absolutely, from head to toe in black and white.
To say that I embraced the whole two-tone movement in terms of my lifestyle would be an understatement. And I felt proud wearing my clothes. That was my sort of uniform.
You identified by wearing those clothes, you were saying, this is who I am. I'm here for unity. I'm here because we want to come together, unified, one voice from all of us.
Just because you're a black boy, just because you're a white, it doesn't mean you've got to hate it. It doesn't mean you've got to fight. It doesn't make it alright.
We're at the Canal Basin in Coventry, where we took the iconic photo. That's on the first album. There weren't no water there. Good thing, because I couldn't swim.
Oh, the first album cover, you know, I had the idea of it being like the Who's My Generation cover, where we all looked up. And Chalky Davis was the photographer, and he went up into the old building there and took one looking down. But yeah, it was kind of homage to the Who, because they were a big influence on, a bad influence on me, yeah. But no, a big influence on the specials.
Chalky used to take a lot of good picture of the band. So, you know, when he was doing it, you just said, okay, Chalky knows what he's doing, so just, you know, just let him get on with it.
For some reason, the canal had dried up completely, and, you know, some poor bugger had bought his holiday cruiser, and it was becalmed in this dry canal, and it was rotting away. So we took a picture on that.
So Chalky, yeah man, that is good.
It's Friday night. The beautiful spa town of Malvern awaits an invasion by thousands of short-haired, parka-clad mods. They've travelled miles to see the groups who are playing tonight.
Yeah, when we did the two-tone tour, it was amazing. Staying in hotels away from home, it was a lot of fun.
On the two-tone tour, right, we all shared the one bus.
There were 3 bands, us, Madness, and the Specials, on the kind of bus that you go to, you know, swimming lessons in when you're in school.
It's like the Borstal outing, you know.
So there we were, 3 bands crammed into this coach. We didn't know what was coming. We were in the music papers before, now we're in the Sun and the Daily Mirror, which is a whole different thing. You're reaching a completely bigger audience.
With ska music, you've got to commit to it. You've got to commit to it. You've got to go in there. I mean, there'd be sweat dripping off the walls. I mean, everybody in the audience was just going mad as soon as any of us came on stage and started. There was just something about the actual rhythm of ska that just got to people.
Long shot, kicky bucket. Long shot, kicky bucket.
Whole dance halls was, you could see them shaking, there's steam rising off the crowd. It really was incredible energy that we'd sort of somehow tapped into. It was kind of the energy of punk, but luckily without the gobbing, you know.
Feeding off them, yeah man, running around, jumping around. But that was just me. That's just natural. That was just natural. Jerry, he was lively as well. We used to play off each other, but I was the mother one.
I remember in Southend, the floorboards in this dance hall started giving way and kids were dropping through into the cellar, you know, it was mad.
Here we go.
You're a girl.
This used to be the big glass tower with the stairs.
Yeah.
And the glass walkway
Straight
on top.
across. Yep. You should start from about there.
It was massive.
Yeah.
Let's get in.
For the majority of youngsters, there is almost nowhere to go except this one huge dance hall.
It was a special place because it was just central to the whole nightlife of Coventry, wasn't it, really? It was the biggest, the biggest place. Wow. A completely different environment to how it used to be. Stage over there.
Yeah, just...
Audience all up here in the balcony. And a sea of 2,000 people jumping up and down.
It was a place to be at the time, wasn't it?
On any night, really, because it was open till 2 in the morning.
Yeah. It was about 10 pence to get in.
Yeah.
So we used to stand outside of the main door.
Ask people for money.
Yeah. We've got 10 pence.
I was a DJ at the Locarno, and it was the only place really of big entertainment. So on a Monday night, we would have between 1,200 and 1,800 kids under 18. And then on the weekend, we'd have 1,800 people over 18.
And when I used to come here with Pete Waterman, that's where I used to do the dance in Neville and the Boys for Pete Waterman. He used to give it some movement. I tell you, yeah. No, like this, was to give it that, man, and do the shuffling, and with the shuffle, splits, everything like that.
Show me the splits.
How old do you think I am now? Come on.
Oh, Neville oozed presence. I mean, he was just a character. And, you know, the great thing about him, they all loved him. Everybody knew it was Nev. Nev's going to do his bit now.
I've jumped off this before, you know.
I bet you have. It was so traumatic, I've probably forgotten it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the best night was when Two Tone Tour came here.
Oh, yeah. We've got a lot of people.
Hometown gig.
Stop your messing around. Better think of your future.
It just was wild. The crowd was so frantic. And you look down there, you see a people.
Rudy, a message to you, Rudy. A message to you.
I think it was the 25th of November, 1979. The excitement was ridiculous. There were crowds outside trying to get in. It was ram-packed in here.
It was heaving.
Your hometown crowd applauding so much, and they loved what we were doing so much. It's so exciting to hear a whole crowd of 2,000 plus people chanting the band name, you know, from obviously for us it was Selector, Selector, Selector.
Be a little noise here. All right.
Thank you and good night.
Oh, big soon come back.
My name's Terry, and I've really enjoyed myself tonight.
You know, we did have some people that followed us from Coventry in the early days, and when it came to the encore, they got on stage with us. I mean, I don't know whether they felt safer on the stage or what. Then that just became a tradition.
I've seen them want to dance, and I could tell they wanted to be part of it. So I used to say, oh, come on up, come on up. You want them to be not just fans out there enjoying it. You want them to be with you. That's where you get the energy from. And the more energy I was giving out, they was giving me back the same way. Then I was giving it more. I was going crazy. Up and down, here you go, boy.
It's too much pressure.
It was utter anything goes exuberance. There was usually as many people on stage as there were in the front part of the audience.
It started happening earlier and earlier in the set, and it got a bit out of hand, but you couldn't stop it, you know, you really couldn't stop it.
You've got about 3 skinheads draped all over you, and everyone's just having this wonderful time.
I mean, it would be health and safety nightmare these days.
It did go wrong a few times. A stage collapsed. I guess there was too many people on stage. Stage collapsed, so we had to stop the show a few times.
It was definitely a Coventry contingent that started that.
People in Coventry, all of a sudden, they had 2 hugely successful bands that had come from their hometown, and the whole world was taking notice of us.
But I think the biggest thing was when we went to America, because the Midwest was in a different century almost. One place that we played, we went on after a wet T-shirt competition. Men in 10-gallon hats kind of skipping around as though it's Christmas. So that took some bottle and they were wondering, what are all these black people doing here? Because in those days, when we walked into a truck stop place, we could stop the place dead from talking. So that didn't make it particularly great for going on stage at some of these shows, because you just felt as though you wanted to rip everybody's head off.
Everybody had a lot to cope with, which is probably why we argued a lot. But the argument turned into a powerful musical set.
Oh, it was a bit intense. That hour on stage was, the good reason for doing it all. The other 23 hours were a little more problematic.
The two-tone spirit, very much still alive in Coventry. I feel it, a lot of people here feel it. This is my new project, and this is the lineup. We've got an age range of 22, 23, up to Ozzy Holt, who's 82, and Bella Dini, who has the most wonderful voice.
Come around, I haven't seen you for a long time.
If you were born and bred in Coventry, you most likely will be into two-tone. I think it makes up the spirit of the city, to be honest, with a lot of people that I know. It's a representation that music can bring anyone from any background together, and that's what we're aiming to do with this track.
Unity, no matter what complexion you are. Just get in there and do your thing.
It's wonderful to be doing something that's inspired and related to two-tone. Here, still in Coventry, yeah, it's where it all started.
Baby, you love me Wi-Fi. Yeah, your pen pan love letter, me still alright. Once bitten, twice shy, me no stop cry. Water full the river, then and overflow the line. Say we friend them two-face and them bad mind. Feed them like dirty one comes white behind. I.
It just means a lot to me because a lot of people from all around the world can come and see what's happening here. Scarpuccino. It's run by fans. Dare I say they're all as me, but they're very loyal. Okay, we've got silver disc, we've got gold disc. Oh, it's my hat, I think. Yeah, brilliant. There's stuff in here that I didn't even know was in here. Like ultra-rare packets of Japanese cigarettes. Gangsters. Oh, I keep looking at this. I remember jumping off and nearly done my knee in. I used to stand on this, dancing away on there, jumping off. Oh, yeah. Brings back a lot of memories. It's a great feeling because at this time you never thought you'd have something like this. And to have it now, it touches me. It touches me.
I mean, I think if there's one song that Margaret Thatcher wishes never got released, it's probably Ghost Town.
The first time I ever heard it, I knew it was number one. I remember hearing it in the car and thought, my God, that's number one.
So, you know, this is a demo of me playing Ghost Town on the home organ, just on my own, when I first wrote it. I think I wrote the music first. I was working on that for ages. And the lyrics, you know, I wrote on tour, just seeing what was going down around the country.
Oh my goodness, talk about zeitgeist. That one song suddenly captured so much.
In Coventry and all over England, it painted the same picture. This town is coming like a ghost town.
All the clubs are being closed down. This place is coming like a ghost town. Bands won't play no more.
Listen to the lyrics. I mean, his lyrics were really perfect. They were modern poetry. We lived in a ghost town. You know, the factories were crumbling around our ears. We just had the miners' strike, and at the Locarno I was having to have a generator outside, and the records at 45 were going up and down because the generators weren't steady.
It was about the recession and 3 million people on the dole. It was about the police harassment and unemployment. It was like a perfect storm, really.
And of course, it was very prophetic because very soon after, Britain exploded with the riots. And that song, in many ways, became the theme tune.
Government leaving the youth on the shelf. This place is coming like a ghost town.
Remembering being in this car, I remember with great fun. Late at night, Horace drove it. He was a safer driver than I was.
It defined a whole generation, defined a nation. I think Ghost Town is definitely the song that the Specials will be remembered by.
But the last song, the last video, I'll always remember it. This old boy here.
It's coming like a ghost town.
Well, like the three of us was the front men in the Specials. Our ideas didn't come out in the Specials, really. It was boiling up inside us, and the time came to explode, and Funboy 3 came out.
It's quite funny, really. Everybody takes us so seriously. We're just having a good laugh.
When the Funboy 3 left the Specials, I was determined to carry on the political side of the Specials, because, I mean, there are things that musicians can say that politicians are scared to say because they're always concerned about how many votes they've got,
Well, Nelson Mandela was the leader of the African National Congress, which was a resistance movement in South Africa dedicated to the overthrow of the white apartheid government. And he's now been in prison in South Africa in terrible conditions for 21 years, so that's what inspired me to write the song.
Nothing prepared me for when you hear the record.
The chorus, everything about it was just so perfect in terms of getting over a simple, clean message. It was an incredible use of the platform, pop music, to bring global attention to apartheid.
The anti-apartheid movement had asked for a massive display of solidarity, and they weren't disappointed. The march through London stretched for miles. As far as the eye could see, a stream of noisy but orderly protest.
And then it culminated in a huge festival on Clapham Common, which had 250,000 people. It was the biggest anti-apartheid demonstration there'd ever been anywhere in the world at the time, and I put that bill together.
This afternoon, a massive crowd gathered in the sunshine, a 6-hour freedom festival, a heady mixture of politics and pop.
But I really went out of my way to make sure that it was a good mix of black artists and white artists. We had Hugh Masekela, Gil Scott-Heron, Sting, Sade, Paul Weller, Elvis Costello. That was definitely my proudest moment, organising that concert. It was amazing.
billion people all over the world have been watching today's Nelson Mandela concert from Wembley.
And then there was another concert at Wembley after Mandela had been released, which he actually came to.
Mr. Nelson Mandela.
And he got a 30-minute standing ovation from the crowd at Wembley. And I was in the crowd at that point. And that was an incredible moment as well. I mean, really mind-blowing moment. But yeah, it was a great honour to meet him. There was a huge queue of people. Someone introduced me and he said, "Ah, yes, very good."
I absolutely believe that that song had a lot to do with, bringing a rapid end to apartheid and the release of Nelson Mandela.
So the big Mandela Global concerts, which went to hundreds of millions of people apparently, that was the culmination of two-tone, really.
Coventry was the perfect place for two-tone to begin. The conversations that we were having about sexism and racism are now relatively common parlance. A whole new language got discovered. I'm not even sure in 1979 that racism was a word that was actually bandied around by people and was up for serious discussion, let alone multiculturalism. The conversation is ongoing. We need to tackle these subjects.
The legacy is hopefully that some of the anti-racist messages got across and people had a good time, and it contributed to, a multiracial Britain, and it's hard to measure that stuff, but, hopefully it was part of that.
When you can have that powerful music and you can be saying something about the human condition as well, it's positive, it's joyous, it sounds good, it's got interesting lyrics, it's got everything you need.
Basically, we're just saying, stop your messing around. Stop your messing around. Better think of your future.
It was, wild bad behaviour and insanity from day one. So it all sounds very serious, all this. But, it was also full-on rock and roll, and we wanted to be pop stars,